Tharos howled in mind-shattering agony, his mangled blue flesh spilling steaming guts onto the blood-slicked rubble, as he dragged his broken body through the war-scarred Iridian streets, desperate to evade the genocidal death squads of his own species. The once proud Iridian war beast, a colossal bioengineered killing machine, had been bred for one purpose: to rip apart his own people. Civil war had fractured the Iridian clans. Tharos served as the personal mount of warlord Groknak, mightiest of the Skull-Takers clan. Side by side, beast and rider butchered their way across the planet, reveling in gore-splattered glory. Until today, ambushed by a rival clan, warlord Groknak was vaporized by a plasma mine. His death cry still rang in Tharos's skull. Leaderless, the Skull-Takers retreated in a panicked rout. They abandoned a gravely wounded Tharos, leaving him to be torn apart by the enemy clan's war beasts. Tharos had no choice. He fled alone and dying, into the ruins of a shattered city. The war beast's will to live drove him onward, even as the searing pain of his wounds threatened to drag him into oblivion. High above, a human dropship knifed through the smoke-choked sky. It bore the insignia of the United Earth military. The ship's bay doors yawned open, disgorging a squad of battle-scarred human warriors. Clad in hulking exoskeletons, they stomped onto the rubble with grim purpose. Leading them was Sergeant Sean Scorer, a legendary veteran who'd spent his life knee-deep in the blood and guts of 100 alien worlds. He scanned the hellscape, his jaw tight. The humans had mere hours to evacuate their civilians before the Iridians unleashed a planet-killing quantum singularity weapon. If the civilians died, Earth would rain nuclear Armageddon upon Iridia. Billions would perish in a cross-species genocide. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance. Scorer's iron eyes locked onto a trail of luminous blue blood, stark against the rubble. He followed it, coming to the heaving flank of a grievously wounded war beast. It was Tharos. The creature snarled, mustering the final atoms of its strength. Even in death it would fight with the indomitable spirit of a true warrior born. Scorer froze. A tense heartbeat passed. He recognized the beast's bravery, the sheer balls to keep going in the face of hopeless agony. The human did the unthinkable. He drew a pistol-sized healing field generator. Azure light bathed the beast. Tharos's eyes widened as the nanomachines in the field stitched together his shredded flesh. Scorer gestured to the dropship. The message was clear. This creature was coming with them. Earth owed a debt to all those who fought with courage, human or alien. It would be the final insult. Iridia's finest war beast saved by humans. The natives would go apeshit with rage at the theft of their prize weapon. Tensions between the species would skyrocket. It would be considered an act of war. But Sergeant Sean Scorer didn't give a damn. Let them come. Humanity always paid its debts, and this beast had earned a ride off this rock. Besides, Scorer had questions that needed answers, like how a civil war erupted just as humans arrived to sign a peace treaty with Iridia, and why the natives were in such a damned hurry to blast their own world into atoms. Something stank worse than the beast's wounds. Scorer vowed to get to the bottom of it. Tharos was coming with them, and God help anyone, human or Iridian, who got in their way. As the human dropship rocketed into the smoggy sky, the stolen war beast secure in its hold, General Zack slammed an armored fist onto the command console of his battle headquarters. The force dented the metal. "They dare!" the warlord roared, spittle flying from his tusked maw. His yellow eyes blazed with fury. "That beast is Iridian property." Essex turned to his subordinate, Captain Kral. The younger Iridian was a rising star in the clan's ranks, renowned for his ruthless cunning. "Take your best warriors," Zax growled. "Hunt down that ship. Bring me back my beast and the heads of any humans who get in your way." Kral's lipless mouth twisted into a predatory grin. "With pleasure, General." Minutes later, Kral's elite strike team boarded a sleek gunship, bristling with advanced weapons. The engines roared to life, propelling the craft into the sky in pursuit of its prey. Aboard the human dropship, Scorer and Private Finn crouched over Tharos's massive bulk in the cargo bay. The medic ran a handheld scanner over the beast's wounds, assessing the damage. Scorer nodded, his eyes narrowed. As Finn worked, the sergeant noticed something odd, glints of metal embedded in Tharos's exposed flesh. He leaned closer, his fingers tracing the strange implants. "The hell?" Scorer muttered. "You ever seen tech like this in a Uridian before?" Finn shook his head. "No, sir, looks almost like—" A klaxon blared through the ship, cutting him off. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Sergeant Scorer, report to the cockpit. We've got bogies on our 6. Scorer sprinted to the front of the ship. Through the viewport, he saw a Uridian gunship closing fast, its laser cannons glowing with deadly charge. "Evasive maneuvers," Scorer barked. "Don't let that thing lock on." The human pilot wrenched the controls, sending the dropship into a stomach-churning spiral. Laser blasts sizzled past, barely missing the hull. But the Iridians were relentless. Their ship was faster, more maneuverable. Scorer knew they couldn't outrun it for long. His eyes scanned the terrain below and locked onto a narrow, winding canyon. A crazy idea took shape. "Fly into that canyon," Scorer ordered. "We'll lose them in the rocks." With a muttered prayer, the pilot angled the dropship downward, plunging into the canyon's shadowy depths. The Iridian gunship followed close behind, its laser cannons blazing. Scorer gripped the back of the pilot's seat as the walls of the canyon rushed past, mere meters from the ship's wings. One mistake, one twitch of the controls, and they'd be smashed to atoms. But if they could outmaneuver the Iridians, if they could find a way to escape, then maybe, just maybe, they'd live long enough to uncover the secrets hidden within Tharos's flesh. It was a 1,000,000-to-1 shot, but Sergeant Sean Scorer had never been one to back down from a fight. The human dropship careened through the canyon, its hull screeching as it scraped the rock walls. Missiles from Kral's pursuing gunship slammed into the cliff face, showering the fleeing vessel with an avalanche of boulders. Inside the cargo bay, Tharos roared in pain as he was thrown against the bulkhead. The impact tore open his freshly healed wounds, splattering the deck with luminous blue blood. Finn grabbed hold of the war beast's harness, struggling to keep him upright as the ship bucked and rolled. "Hold him steady!" Scorer shouted over the din of explosions. He and the other soldiers raced to man the dropship's defensive turrets, returning fire at their Iridian pursuers. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the canyon, superheating the air and turning rock to molten slag. The human ship jinked and juked, barely staying ahead of the onslaught. As they whipped around a hairpin turn, Scorer's keen eyes spotted an anomaly in the cliff face, a shadowed cleft, half hidden behind a veil of vines and moss. A cave entrance. "There," he barked, jabbing a finger at the opening. "Fly us into that cave." The pilot hesitated for a split second, then wrenched the controls hard to starboard. The dropship lurched sickeningly as it slewed towards the hidden portal, its engines screaming with the strain. But Kral had anticipated the move. The Iridian commander snarled a command, and his gunship unleashed a salvo of plasma bombs. The searing projectiles raced ahead of the dropship, plunging into the cave mouth. A thunderous detonation shook the canyon, and a massive slab of rock slammed down like the fist of an angry god, sealing the cave entrance behind the human ship. They were trapped inside. Warning klaxons blared as the dropship's proximity sensors detected an incoming obstacle. The pilot hauled back on the stick, but it was too late. The ship ploughed into an underground lake with a mighty splash, water gushing through the breaches in its hull. Scorer and Finn scrambled to free Tharos from his harness, dragging the massive creature towards the escape hatch. The war beast thrashed in the rising water, bellowing in rage and pain. Somehow they managed to heave him through the opening, spilling out into the bone-chilling lake. The human soldiers followed, gasping as the icy water shocked the breath from their lungs. They kicked towards the distant shore, dragging themselves out of the water and into a vast underground cavern. The remains of their dropship sank beneath the surface behind them, vanishing into the black depths. Scorer looked around, his eyes adjusting to the gloom. They were in a huge chamber, its walls carved from ancient stone. Labyrinthine tunnels branched off in all directions, leading deeper into the bowels of the mountain. They were trapped, cut off from their command with no way to call for help. And somewhere above, Kral and his warriors were surely searching for another way in, intent on hunting them down and reclaiming their stolen prize. He turned to Finn. "Patch up the beast as best you can. We're going to need him if we run into any more surprises down here." As Finn tended to Tharos's wounds, Skora and the others began to explore the eerie labyrinthine ruins. They moved cautiously, weapons at the ready, their lights piercing the darkness. But nothing could have prepared them for what they found. The tunnels were filled with strange devices and machinery, technology beyond anything the Iridians or humans had ever developed. Glowing screens flickered with alien script, and bizarre contraptions hummed with unknown power. And as Skora examined the relics more closely, a chilling realization dawned. The technology bore a disturbing resemblance to the implants they'd found in Tharos's flesh. Whatever this place was, it was connected to the Iridian war beast, and perhaps to the very origins of the civil war that threatened to destroy their world. Skora led his team deeper into the labyrinthine Prothean ruins, their footsteps echoing through the ancient halls. The walls pulsed with a faint, eerie glow, as if the very stone was infused with long-dormant power. Private Finn, his eyes wide with wonder, ran his hands over the intricate glyphs and symbols carved into the walls. "Sarge, this is incredible," he breathed. "I've never seen anything like it. These ruins, they're Prothean." No, they were real, and their technology was light years beyond anything we or the Iridians have. Finn pointed to a series of complex diagrams etched into the stone. "Look at this. It's a schematic for some kind of advanced weaponry, and those implants in Tharos." The war beast growled at the mention of his name, his eyes glowing an unsettling blue. "Then I think they're Prothean too, designed to interface with this place." Skora's mind raced. If the Protheans had taken an interest in the Iridian War, if they'd chosen Tharos as some kind of living weapon, what did that mean for their mission, for the fate of Iridia itself? He made a decision. "Finn, see if you can sync Tharos's implants with the ruin systems. I want to know what the hell the Protheans were up to." Finn hesitated, then nodded. He approached Tharos cautiously, a strange device in hand. The warbeast snarled but held still as Finn attached the device to one of the glowing implants. Suddenly, the chamber filled with blinding light. A shimmering hologram materialized before them, taking the form of a tall, slender alien with luminous eyes. "Greetings," it said, its voice resonating with ancient power. "I am Zelos, an artificial construct created by the Prothean Empire to oversee this installation." Skora stepped forward, his rifle held tight. "What do you want with Tharos, with Iridia?" Zelos tilted its head. "The Protheans foresaw the Iridian civil war. We chose Tharos as a conduit for our technology, hoping to end the conflict swiftly and prevent the destruction of the Iridian race. But before we could fully implement our plan, our empire was wiped out by a cataclysm beyond our understanding. Our technology, including Tharos's implants, has lain dormant for millennia." A deafening explosion rocked the chamber, cutting him off. Chunks of stone rained down from the ceiling as a gaping hole was blasted in the far wall. Through the smoke and rubble, Skora saw a towering figure emerge, Kral flanked by his elite Iridian warriors. The captain's eyes blazed with triumphant fury as he leveled his plasma rifle at Tharos. "At last," he snarled, "the beast is mine." Skora and his soldiers reacted instantly, diving for cover and returning fire. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the chamber, scorching stone and flesh alike. But Tharos did not cower. As the battle raged around him, the war beast's implants pulsed with blinding light. His muscles rippled with newfound strength, his senses sharpening to superhuman levels. With an earth-shaking roar, Tharos charged into the fray, moving with a speed and grace that belied his massive size. His claws and fangs tore through the Iridian ranks, sending warriors flying like broken dolls. Skora fought at the beast's side, his rifle barking in staccato bursts. Man and monster united against a common foe. Together they drove the Iridians back, forcing them to take cover amidst the crumbling ruins. But Kral would not be denied his prize. With a snarl of rage, the captain lunged forward, his plasma blade crackling with deadly energy. He struck at Tharos, the glowing blade slicing towards the warbeast's throat. But Skora was there, parrying the blow with the butt of his rifle. The two warriors clashed in a storm of sparks and snarls, human and Iridian locked in mortal combat. Around them the battle raged on, plasma fire lighting the shadows of the ancient chamber. Finn and the other soldiers fought with desperate courage, trying to hold the line against the Iridian onslaught. But for Skora, in that moment, there was only the fight, only the clash of weapon on weapon, the hammer of his heart in his chest, only the knowledge that he would die before he let Kral take Tharos. The secrets of the Protheans, the fate of Iridia itself, hung in the balance, and Sergeant Sean Skora would be damned if he let it all fall to the Iridians. Skora lunged at Kral, his rifle cracking against the Iridian's plasma blade in a shower of sparks. The two warriors traded blows in a deadly dance, weaving through the rubble of the ancient chamber. Kral's eyes blazed with hatred as he pressed the attack, his blade humming with deadly energy. Nearby, Private Finn's fingers flew over the Prothean console, desperately trying to extract the ancient data. Sweat beaded on his brow as he worked, the battle raging around him. He knew that the information hidden within Zelos's mainframe could change everything. The war, the fate of Iridia, the balance of power in the galaxy. Tharos, his implants glowing with Prothean power, leapt into the fray with an earth-shaking roar. His massive jaws clamped down on Kral's sword arm, the force of the bite shattering bone. The Iridian captain howled in pain, his blade clattering to the ground. Skora seized the opening, slamming the butt of his rifle into Kral's face. The Iridian crumpled, blood spurting from his shattered tusks. "I've got it," Finn shouted, his voice triumphant. "The data, it's downloading." Skora nodded, his eyes never leaving the fallen Kral. Around them, the Iridian strike team was in disarray, their leader defeated. "Let's move," Skora barked. "We need to get out of here before reinforcements arrive." The humans fought their way out of the ruins, Tharos at their side. The warbeast moved like a force of nature, scattering Iridian warriors with every swipe of his claws. Plasma fire filled the air, but the humans pressed forward, driven by desperation and the knowledge that they held the key to ending the war. They burst from the caverns into the blinding light of Iridia's sun. Skora shielded his eyes, scanning the sky for any sign of pursuit. What he saw made his heart leap. A UEM dropship, flanked by a squadron of fighters, was descending towards their position. The cavalry had arrived. "They must have picked up the energy surge from the Prothean tech," Finn said, his voice awed. "I can't believe it. We're getting out of here." As the dropship touched down and the ramp lowered, Skora felt a sense of grim satisfaction. They had done it. Against all odds, they had secured the Prothean data and Tharos. The tide of the war was about to turn. But even as he led his team aboard the waiting ship, Skora knew that their fight was far from over. General Zax would never let this affront go unanswered. The Iridian warlord would come for them, with all the might of his armies. And when he did, Sergeant Sean Skora would be ready. He glanced at Tharos, the warbeast's eyes glinting with newfound purpose. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the sake of Iridia, for the sake of the galaxy itself, they had to. The dropship lifted off, engines roaring as it clawed for the stars. In the distance, the ruins of the Prothean chamber collapsed in on themselves, burying the ancient secrets beneath a mountain of rubble. But the true legacy of the Protheans, the key to their power and technology, now rested in the hands of Skora and his team, and with it, they would change the face of the war, and the fate of two worlds. Skora settled into his seat, Tharos at his side. The beast's flank rose and fell with steady breaths, the Prothean implants pulsing softly beneath his scales. A faint smile tugged at the corners of Skora's mouth. Let Zayax come. Let him bring his legions and his fury. Humanity and Tharos would be waiting. The UEM dropship rocketed through the atmosphere, carrying Skora, Tharos, and the battered remnants of their team back to Earth. As they docked at UEM headquarters, A phalanx of armed guards surrounded the ship, weapons drawn. Tharos growled, his implants glowing, but Skora placed a steadying hand on the war beast's flank. "Easy," he muttered. "We're among friends here." The guards parted as a figure strode forward, Admiral Nora Vance, the iron-willed commander of the UEM's Iridian operations. Her eyes, cold as steel, appraised Skora and Tharos. "Sergeant Skora," she said crisply, "I hear you've brought me a present." Skora nodded. "The Prothean data, ma'am, and Tharos here. He's the key to it all." Vance's gaze flickered to the war beast. "We'll see about that. Briefing room now. Bring your pet." Minutes later, Skora stood at rigid attention as Vance paced the length of the briefing room. Tharos crouched in the corner, his eyes tracking the Admiral's every move. "The Prothean technology changes everything," Vance said. "It could end this war, Skora, bring the Iridians to the negotiating table." She fixed him with a piercing stare. "I want you and Private Finn to work with our best scientists and strategists. Analyze that data. Find a way to use it to force a peace deal." "Yes, ma'am," Skora said. "And Tharos?" "The beast undergoes testing. We need to know what those implants can do, how we can use them." Skora hesitated. "Ma'am, with respect, Tharos is more than just—" "It's a weapon, Sergeant," Vance snapped. "One we'll need if we're going to end this war. Understood?" As Skora and Finn pored over the Prothean data, Tharos endured a battery of medical tests and cybernetic enhancements. The UEM scientists worked to fully integrate the beast's implants, unlocking new levels of strength, speed, and tactical awareness. Days turned into weeks. Progress was slow but steady. Skora began to believe that they might actually pull this off, that the Prothean technology could be the key to ending the war. Alarm screamed throughout the base as a team of Iridian assassins, their stealth tech rendering them all but invisible, slipped past the UEM defenses. They made straight for the command center, plasma blades glinting in the dim light. Their target, Admiral Vance. Skora and Tharos were the first to respond. They charged into the command center, weapons blazing as the Iridians closed in on the Admiral. Tharos leapt into the fray, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to intercept a plasma bolt meant for Vance's heart. The war beast roared in pain but kept fighting. His claws and fangs tore through the assassins, even as their blades sliced into his flesh. Skora fought at Tharos's side, his rifle spitting death with every squeeze of the trigger. It was a brutal, bloody affair, but in the end the UEM forces prevailed. The assassins lay dead, their mission a failure. As medics tended to Tharos's wounds, Skora examined the bodies. His blood ran cold as he recognized a familiar insignia on their armor, the personal sigil of Captain Kroll. Vance's face was grim. "Then we have no choice. We need to take the fight to them." She turned to Skora. "Assemble a team, your best operatives. You're going deep into Iridian territory. Find out what Zax is planning and put a stop to it, whatever it takes." Skora nodded, his jaw set. He looked to Tharos, the war beast's eyes gleaming with a fierce predatory light. "Looks like we're not done with each other yet," he said. Tharos growled in response, a sound that was half challenge, half anticipation. Whatever waited for them in the heart of Iridian space, they would face it together. Skora, Tharos, and their hand-picked team of UEM operatives crept through the shadows of the Iridian military compound, their hearts pounding with adrenaline. The towering walls bristled with plasma cannons and patrolling guards, a testament to the facility's tight security. Using stolen access codes and cloaking tech, they slipped past the outer defenses and into the compound's labyrinthine corridors. The air hummed with the buzz of power conduits and the distant clanking of machinery. "The intel points to a secret lab in the lower levels," Skora whispered, consulting a holographic map. "That's where we'll find Prothean's fury." Tharos growled softly, his implants glowing in the dim light. The war beast's senses were on high alert, attuned to the slightest hint of danger. They descended deeper into the facility, bypassing security checkpoints with careful hacks and precise takedowns of Iridian guards. As they reached the lowest level, they discovered a massive blast door emblazoned with the project's code name. Scorer's tech specialist cracked the door's encryption, and they stepped into a cavernous laboratory filled with pulsing Prothean technology. At the center of the room stood a towering energy core, its surface alive with swirling patterns of light. "By the gods," Scorer breathed. "They've done it. They've reverse-engineered the Prothean tech." Suddenly alarms blared throughout the compound, and the lab's doors slammed shut. Zax's elite guards poured into the room, plasma rifles leveled at Scorer's team. "Did you really think you could infiltrate my facility undetected?" General Zax's voice boomed over the intercom. "You've walked right into my trap, Sergeant Scorer." Tharos roared, lunging at the nearest guard and ripping him apart with razor claws. Scorer and his team opened fire, taking cover behind consoles and pylons as plasma bolts filled the air. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with the fury of cornered beasts. Scorer barked orders, coordinating his team's fire and directing them to strategic positions. In the midst of the chaos, Tharos charged towards the energy core, his implants resonating with the Prothean technology. The war beast reared up, slamming his claws into the core's control panel. Tendrils of energy lashed out, enveloping Tharos in a crackling web of light. The beast howled as the Prothean tech surged through his body, threatening to overload his implants. But Tharos held fast, pouring his own strength into the core, forcing it to destabilize. The room shook as the core began to pulsate erratically, arcs of energy scorching the walls. As his team raced to rig the lab with explosives, Scorer found himself face to face with a familiar foe. Captain Kral emerged from the smoke, his plasma blade ignited. "You and I have unfinished business, Sergeant," Kral snarled. The two warriors clashed in a whirlwind of strikes and parries, their blades sparking with each impact. Scorer ducked and weaved, matching Kral's speed and ferocity. Across the lab, Tharos bellowed in agony, his body convulsing as the Prothean energy tore through his flesh. Scorer knew they were running out of time. With a final, desperate lunge, Scorer caught Kral off balance, his blade finding a gap in the Iridian's armor. Kral stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock. Scorer pressed his advantage, hammering the captain with a relentless flurry of blows. Kral's defenses crumbled, and Scorer drove his blade deep into the Iridian's chest. As Kral crumpled to the floor, Scorer sprinted to Tharos's side. He slammed his fist into the control panel, severing the warbeast's link to the core. Tharos collapsed, his body smoking and twitching. Scorer heaved the beast over his shoulders, staggering towards the exit. They ran, racing against the countdown as the lab shook itself apart behind them. Explosions chased their heels, the Prothean weapon consuming itself in a storm of fire and shrapnel. They burst from the compound just as the final charges detonated, the ground heaving beneath their feet. Scorer and his team threw themselves clear as the facility collapsed in on itself, burying the Prothean horrors beneath tons of rubble. But as the dust settled, a new horror dawned. The explosion had triggered a chain reaction, the compound's power grid overloading in a cascade of failures. Scorer watched in helpless dread as the energy surge raced towards the nearby Iridian city, its towering spires glittering in the distance. The surge hit the city's power network, and the night sky lit up with a blinding flash. Scorer shielded his eyes, his heart sinking as he realized the terrible truth. The city's power grid was going critical, its reactors melting down one by one. In a matter of minutes, the entire metropolis would be consumed in a radioactive inferno, taking millions of Iridian lives with it. Scorer looked to Tharos, the warbeast stirring weakly at his feet. They had stopped Zax's weapon, but at what cost? The UEM sergeant clenched his fists, his mind racing. They had to find a way to contain the meltdown to save the city and its people. But time was running out, and the odds were stacked against them. Scorer knew that he and Tharos might be the only ones standing between the Iridians and total annihilation. He looked to his team, their faces grim with determination. They knew the stakes, the weight of the lives hanging in the balance. Scorer and his team raced through the crumbling streets of the Iridian city, the acrid stench of burning plasma filling their lungs. Tharos, his body still racked with pain from his link to the Prothean energy core, staggered beside them, his implants pulsing with an eerie blue light. "We need to get these civilians out of here now," Skora barked, gesturing to the terrified Iridians huddled in the shadows. "Tharos, can you interface with the city's security systems? Find us the safest route to the extraction point." The warbeast growled, his eyes flickering as he tapped into the compound's network. Data streamed across his vision, mapping out the labyrinthine streets and highlighting potential threats. "This way," Tharos rumbled, his voice a guttural rasp. "We can avoid the worst of the fighting if we stick to the side streets." Skora nodded, signaling for his team to take point. They moved quickly, their weapons at the ready, as they guided the civilians through the war-torn city. Plasma bolts sizzled overhead, and the ground shook with the force of distant explosions. Suddenly, a barrage of plasma grenades rained down on their position, forcing them to scatter. Skora dove for cover behind a crumbling wall, his heart pounding in his chest. "Ambush!" he shouted, scanning the rooftops for the source of the attack. And then he saw him. General Zax, his armor scorched and battered, emerged from the smoke like a demon from hell. The Iridian warlord's eyes blazed with a madness born of desperation and rage. "You think you can steal my victory, human?" Zax roared, his voice a guttural snarl. "I will burn this city to ash before I let you escape with my prize." Skora's team opened fire, their plasma rifles spitting blue death at the advancing Iridians. But Zax's forces were relentless, pouring into the street like a tidal wave of armored flesh. In the chaos of the firefight, several of Skora's team members fell, their bodies riddled with plasma burns. The civilians screamed in terror, cowering behind the crumbling ruins. Tharos, sensing the danger, let out a roar that shook the very foundations of the city. The warbeast charged forward, his Prothean-enhanced muscles propelling him towards Zax with blinding speed. The two titans clashed in a storm of claws and plasma, their strength and fury matched in a battle that would determine the fate of the city. Tharos ripped into Zax's armor with his razor-sharp talons, while the Iridian general rained blow after blow on the warbeast's hide. Skora, seizing the opportunity, rallied his remaining team members and the civilians. "To the extraction point," he shouted, pointing towards the distant landing pads where the dropships waited. They ran, their lungs burning with the effort as the city crumbled around them. Just as they reached the dropships, a massive explosion rocked the streets, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. The power grid had finally succumbed to the chain reaction, and the destruction was spreading like a wildfire. Buildings toppled like dominoes, and the very ground beneath their feet began to crack and split. Skora looked back, his heart wrenching at the thought of leaving Tharos behind. But he knew that the warbeast would never abandon his fight with Zax, not until one of them lay dead. With a muttered curse, Skora turned and sprinted back towards the battle, his rifle clutched tight in his hands. He arrived just in time to see Tharos, his body battered and bleeding, standing over Zax's lifeless corpse. The warbeast swayed on his feet, his strength spent. Skora rushed to his side, slinging Tharos's massive arm over his shoulder. Together they staggered back to the waiting dropship, the heat of the advancing flames licking at their heels. They collapsed into the cargo hold just as the ramp began to rise, the dropship lifting off into the smoke-choked sky. From the viewport, Skora watched as the Iridian city was consumed by the inferno, the flames devouring everything in their path. The destruction was total, a testament to the terrible power of the Prothean technology. But even as the city burned, Skora knew that their mission was far from over. The Iridian civil war still raged across the planet, and the secrets of the Protheans remained locked within Tharos's implants. There were battles still to be fought and mysteries yet to be unraveled. As the dropship descended through the atmosphere of the UEM headquarters, Skora clenched his fists, his mind still reeling from the destruction they'd witnessed on Iridia. Beside him, Tharos lay on a medical gurney, his wounds bandaged, but his eyes alert. The warbeast had fought with a ferocity that Skora had never seen before, a testament to the bond they'd forged through blood and fire. The ramp lowered, and a crowd of UEM personnel swarmed the landing pad, their faces alight with awe and admiration. Cheers erupted as Skora and Tharos emerged, the hero of Iridia and his alien companion. But their celebration was cut short by the arrival of Admiral Vance, her expression grave. "Sergeant Skora, Tharos, we need to talk." In the briefing room, Vance wasted no time. "The Prothean data you recovered. It's revealed the location of a hidden vault on a planet beyond the Outer Rim. We believe it contains an artifact of immense power." Skora leaned forward. "What kind of artifact?" "The kind that could turn the tide of the war, or start a new one." Vance fixed them with a steely gaze. "I need you and Tharos to lead a mission to secure it, before the Iridians can get their hands on it." Tharos growled, his implants glowing. Skora nodded. "We'll need a team." "You'll have the best, specialists in archaeology, tech, and combat. But this mission is strictly off the books. If you fail, the UEM will disavow any knowledge of your actions." The journey to the uncharted planet was fraught with peril. Skora and his team navigated through treacherous asteroid fields and strange space anomalies, the likes of which they'd never seen before. Tharos paced the hold, his senses tuned for any sign of danger. As they approached the planet's atmosphere, the ship bucked and shuddered, alarms blaring as energy surges coursed through the hull. Skora gripped the edge of his seat, his knuckles white as the pilot fought to keep them steady. They hit the ground with a bone-jarring impact, skidding to a stop at the edge of a dense jungle. The air was thick and humid, filled with the calls of alien creatures. Skora and his team disembarked, their weapons at the ready. Tharos padded at their side, his nostrils flaring as he scented the air. "The vault is 2 clicks to the north," Skora said, consulting his scanner. "Keep your eyes open and your fingers on the trigger. We don't know what's out there." But they soon found out. As they trekked through the jungle, they stumbled upon the ruins of an ancient civilization, the architecture unlike anything they'd ever seen. Tharos cocked his head, his implants pulsing as he sensed the Prothean technology that lay hidden beneath the earth. Suddenly a spear whistled out of the undergrowth, embedding itself in a tree trunk inches from Skora's head. The team whirled, their weapons snapping up as a group of primitive warriors emerged from the jungle, their bodies adorned with intricate tattoos and their faces twisted in snarls of rage. "The Kurtak," Skora breathed, "the guardians of the vault." The warriors charged, their spears and knives glinting in the dappled sunlight. Skora and his team opened fire, plasma bolts ripping through the air as they fought to hold the line. Tharos roared, leaping into the fray with claws and fangs bared. He tore through the Kurtak ranks, his Prothean-enhanced strength and speed making him a blur of destruction. But the Kurtak kept coming, wave after wave of fierce warriors pouring out of the jungle. Skora and his team were forced to fall back, their ammunition dwindling as they fought for every inch of ground. Just as they reached the entrance to the vault, a new threat emerged. A heavily armed Iridian strike force, led by none other than Captain Kral, dropped from the sky in a hail of plasma fire. "Did you really think you could escape me, Sergeant Skora?" Kral snarled, his face a twisted mask of hatred. "The artifact will be mine, and your beast will be my trophy." Skora and Tharos charged into battle, plasma bolts and spears flying around them as they fought against both the Iridians and the Kurtak. The air was thick with the stench of blood and sweat, the ground slick with gore. In the chaos of the melee, Tharos found himself face to face with Kral. The two warriors locked in a duel to the death. The warbeast's implants flared, granting him a burst of speed and strength as he lunged at the Iridian captain. Kral was ready, his plasma blade humming as he parried Tharos's blows. The two fighters danced around each other, their moves a blur of lethal grace. Nearby, Skora and his team pushed towards the vault entrance, fighting off the Kurtak as they struggled to reach their objective. Plasma bolts scorched the earth around them, and the screams of the wounded and dying filled the air. Tharos and Kral traded blows, their armor sparking as they clashed again and again. The warbeast's claws raked across Kral's chestplate, leaving deep gouges in the metal. But Kral fought back with a fury born of desperation, his blade slicing through Tharos's flesh and drawing spurts of luminous blood. In a final desperate lunge, Tharos threw himself at Kral, his jaws clamping down on the Iridian's sword arm. Bones crunched and tendons snapped, and Kral howled in agony as his blade fell from nerveless fingers. Tharos reared back, ready to deliver the killing blow. But Kral, with his last ounce of strength, drew a plasma pistol with his free hand and fired point-blank into the warbeast's chest. Tharos staggered back, his implants flickering as he struggled to stay upright. Kral slumped to the ground, his lifeblood pooling beneath him. Skora, seeing his companion's plight, made a split-second decision. He barked orders to his team, sending half of them into the vault to secure the artifact, while he raced to Tharos's side. The warbeast lay on the ground, his breathing labored and his eyes glazed with pain. Skora knelt beside him, his hands shaking as he tried to staunch the flow of blood. Skora raced back to the fallen Tharos, his heart pounding in his chest. The warbeast lay on his side, blood pooling beneath his massive form. His breaths came in ragged gasps, his eyes glazed with pain. "Stay with me, big guy," Skora whispered, his hands shaking as he pulled out a medkit. He injected Tharos with a cocktail of painkillers and coagulants, trying to stabilize the beast's vital signs. In the distance, he heard the shouts of his team as they emerged from the vault, the Prothean artifact secured in a containment field, but their triumph was short-lived. The artifact began to pulse with an eerie, sickly light. It thrummed with power, sending out waves of energy that washed over the planet's surface. The ground shook beneath their feet, and the sky above them darkened with swirling clouds. Skora's comm crackled with static. "Sarge, the artifact! It's destabilizing the atmosphere. We need to get it off-world now." But Skora knew it was too late. The artifact's power was growing exponentially, feeding off the planet's energy. If they tried to remove it, the consequences would be catastrophic. Suddenly Tharos stirred. His eyes locked onto Skora's, and in that moment a flood of images and emotions poured into the human's mind. The Prothean implants, linked to Skora's own neural interface, formed a bridge between their consciousnesses. Skora saw through Tharos's eyes, felt the warbeast's pain and desperation, but he also saw a glimmer of hope, a final, desperate plan. "No," Skora whispered, tears stinging his eyes. "Tharos, no, there has to be another way." But the warbeast's resolve was unwavering. He would sacrifice himself to destroy the artifact, to save the galaxy from the Prothean's legacy of destruction. Skora's heart shattered, but he knew Tharos was right. With a heavy soul he helped the warbeast to his feet, supporting his weight as they limped back towards the vault. The remaining Iridian forces and Kurtak warriors swarmed towards them, desperate to claim the artifact for themselves. Skora and Tharos fought side by side, their movements perfectly synchronized, their bond unbreakable. Plasma bolts sizzled past them, and spears shattered against Tharos's armored hide. The warbeast roared in defiance, his claws and fangs tearing through their enemies with savage fury. At last they reached the vault. Skora's team formed a defensive perimeter, holding back the tide of attackers as Skora and Tharos stumbled inside. The artifact pulsed with malevolent energy, its light casting twisted shadows on the ancient walls. Tharos dragged himself towards it, his implants glowing with a fierce, determined light. "Tharos," Skora choked out, his vision blurred with tears. I can't—" "Go," Tharos rumbled, his voice a deep, resonant growl. "Live, fight, remember." With a final agonized roar, Tharos plunged his claws into the artifact's containment field. The Prothean technology surged through his body, overloading his implants and sending cascades of energy rippling through the vault. Skora staggered back, his heart shattering as he watched Tharos's body convulse with the artifact's power. The warbeast's flesh began to glow, his implants burning with a searing, blinding light. "Goodbye, my friend," Skora whispered, his voice lost in the roar of the energy storm. He turned and ran, tears streaming down his face as the vault began to collapse around him. Chunks of stone rained down from the ceiling, and the ground heaved and buckled beneath his feet. Skora burst from the vault just as it imploded. a shockwave of energy and rubble throwing him to the ground. He lay there, gasping for breath, as the dust settled around him. His team gathered around him, their faces etched with grief and awe. They had seen the sacrifice, the unbreakable bond between human and beast. Skora staggered to his feet, his eyes fixed on the ruins of the vault. Beneath the tons of rubble, he knew, lay the broken body of his friend, the brave war beast who had given his life to save the galaxy. They returned to the UEM headquarters as heroes, greeted by cheering crowds and solemn salutes. But for Skora, the victory was hollow, the triumph ashes in his mouth. He stood alone on the observation deck of the flagship, his eyes fixed on the stars. Out there somewhere, Tharos's spirit roamed free, a guardian of the galaxy he had died to protect. "I'll never forget you, big guy," Skora whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "I'll make sure your sacrifice means something. I'll find a way to end this damn war once and for all." He clenched his fists, his jaw set with determination. The fight was far from over, but Skora would not rest until he had honored Tharos's legacy, until he had forged a lasting peace between their peoples. For now, though, he let himself grieve, let the tears flow freely as he remembered the brave war beast who had fought by his side, who had taught him the true meaning of courage and sacrifice. Tharos was gone, but he would live on in Skora's heart, a shining beacon of hope in a galaxy torn by war and strife. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.